Hey, Monday Night Football picks and a Week 3 recap. Welcome to the Schatz and Tanier FTN NFL podcast for Monday, September 23rd, 2024. I am Aaron Schatz from FTN Fantasy. He is Mike Tanier. You know his Substack at miketanier.substack.com. And we are here to talk about Week 3 in the National Football League, sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. The NFL season is back, and there's no better way to celebrate than using Underdog Fantasy. It is the easiest place to play fantasy sports and the fastest growing app in the industry. Underdog is now offering a new customer special for FTN users, up to $1,000 on your first time deposit. The Underdog app is easy to use, and weekly contests such as the onside kick, the double doink, and the 2-minute drill are back. Head over to Underdog for a deposit match up to $1,000 when you sign up with the code FTN. There is no better place to celebrate the NFL than with Underdog Fantasy. Code FTN. We'll get to this in a little bit, but Red Matt would like everyone to know there's a candlelight vigil tonight in Santa Clara for the 49ers Super Bowl hopes.
We having some injury problems.
We'll get to that in a second, because I think the NFC it's interesting that most of the teams that we thought were the top teams in the NFC have either one or two losses.
Yes.
I wanted to start. You can ask questions if you're watching us live. Of course, we're here Mondays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. We actually got a question on Twitter earlier from Joshua Cypress, wanting to know how analysis of Tomlin and the Steelers can take into account Najee Harris going down at the 1 to get a Tomlin win. Because he only wants one more point than the other team. That's why he wins so many one-score games. Now, I don't think that actually has anything to do with Tomlin winning one-score games, because I don't remember this ever happening in the past where Tomlin specifically had a player go down at the 1.
Right.
It's best known for Brian Westbrook doing it.
Yes.
And it actually happened this week with two different guys.
Okay. Who else did it?
Najee Harris did it, and David Montgomery did it for the Giants.
I didn't watch the last moments of that game. Okay.
The answer to that is, in earlier days of DVOA, I would actually count these as touchdowns so that they'd get that little bit of extra touchdown juice.
Okay.
Now, because we're working on automating everything and manually changing things like that would be too difficult, I didn't this week do that. But Najee Harris's 22-yard run that didn't go into the end zone still counts as a 22-yard run. Like, that drive still counts all the way up to the 1. It still gets plenty of value. That run still gets plenty of value. I don't think that we are going to misjudge Mike Tomlin at the end of the season because they won 20-10 instead of 27-10.
Right. First of all, I don't think we're somehow misjudging Mike Tomlin after 20 years of what he does. I think we have a handle on like the strengths and weaknesses of this team as they every year kind of wind up in the wild card range. But to the point, I think a lot of folks don't understand about the analytics. They say, well, the difference between like our perceptions of 20-10 versus 27-10, one's a blowout, one's a close game. DVOA might be fooled by that. DVOA is not like just handing 7 points or taking away 7 points. It's doing what you're saying. It's saying, okay, there were these fourth quarter drives and the Steelers dominated on both sides of the ball during the fourth quarter, and everything statistically would look kind of like a 20-7.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bump for getting in the end zone because of all the yards. That's the hardest yard to get.
Right.
But even if you take that away, the Steelers clearly dominated that game. And when we do the numbers by the end of the season, it'll be clear that the Steelers dominated that game.
Right. And I think another thing about that is, speaking to teams that might have a more conservative approach. The question being, well, if this is a more conservative team that might run the ball and play to control the clock, will DVOA and DR underrate them as a result?
And I don't think so, because it's honestly, usually it's better to win by 24 than by 10. Right? Like, teams that win by 24 are usually better than teams that win by 10. Now, in this case, Harris and Devin Singletary could have easily had an extra 7 points for their teams, whatever. But the underlying numbers, in EPA does this too. We'll see the drives that got them through the one, and they'll be fine.
Right. And we have a long history of things like guts and stomps that we've been doing for 20 years that suggest, the blowouts are more predictive. And I think Steelers fans should recognize that these close wins don't catapult the team into the Super Bowl. They catapult the team into a 9-8 finish and hoping for a wild card berth. That's historically what's happened.
Speaking of close games that were not as close as the final score, let's talk about the New Orleans Saints, my babies, and the Philadelphia Eagles. 15-12. I actually got surprised that DVOA was not farther apart for this game. Philly had 28%, and Philly had 12%, and New Orleans had minus 28%. And I'm surprised that the gap wasn't bigger, because I thought it was pretty clear that up until that last drive, the Saints were winning despite clearly being outplayed. And then on the last drive, 3 guys ran into each other, and Dallas Goedert went for 60 yards, and then that was that.
The Eagles were playing, I think, incredibly well.
Jalen Carter was on one.
He was amazing for that game. The run defense was playing well. The Eagles were moving the ball very easily between the 20s, and then these disasters kept striking, these self-inflicted injuries, literal injuries, and also fourth down mistakes and turnovers and things like that. I'll tell you, in a Philly bar, it was almost like we were suddenly infected by like the rage zombie virus, and like we were going to burn down that tavern, and I was going to do it too, because that's how frustrating the Eagles were. And then by the end, there was this jubilation. Very weird game.
Yes. I wish there had been more pointing out that what Sirianni did before the end of the first half was the very rare occasion where a coach goes for it when the models say to kick.
Okay. I didn't look at the models.
Because I did not see what Ben Baldwin's model said, but both the Next Gen Stats model and the ESPN model said to kick the field goal with 10 seconds left. And I thought it was obvious because it was 4th and 1 on like the 17 or something.
Yes.
And if you convert that first down, you get one shot at the end zone.
Right.
And then you are kicking a field goal anyway. To me, it's clear to just kick the field goal. And I believe I said this on Twitter. And I was surprised that the ESPN model didn't have a larger gap.
Right.
But it definitely said to kick. I mean, we can argue later on about Sirianni had a 4th and 3 at the goal line, where I know that you felt in your Substack this morning that because of the offensive line injuries that he should have kicked that field goal.
It wasn't at the goal line.
It wasn't at the goal line. Where was it?
It was in field goal range. It was like the 34, somewhere in that range. Right. And so, you're sacrificing very good field position if you don't make it. And again, yes, one of the points I was making, Lane Johnson, Mekhi Becton were both out, which skews it. I could say that one probably was debatable.
Yeah, I thought the first one, though, I mean, I didn't hear a lot of blaming analytics, interestingly. The broadcast much more, maybe this is because Greg Olson is open-minded. The broadcast was much more, Sirianni has the way he does things, and he just does things his way.
Yes.
Than specifically saying this was because of analytics, and I'm glad because analytics said to kick the damn field goal.
Right. And then the final one was 4th and 11, a 60-yard field goal attempt. By the way, Central Tennessee came for the field goals this week.
Absolutely. Yes.
It came for it like with malice aforethought, and there were all these misses. But a 60-yarder in a situation where it was a very narrow game. The Eagles defense was playing well. A punt and pin situation probably would have given the Eagles defense a chance to get another stop the way they were playing. Instead, a 60-yard field goal attempt, which was wide by a wide margin, and then it leads to a quick score by the Saints.
I thought the Saints defense was pretty good. I think the Saints offense, obviously they had to overcome the loss of offensive linemen. Both teams had to overcome the loss of offensive linemen, but I thought you saw the issues with the Saints offense more than you saw the issues with the Saints defense. Although, I mean, there were a couple of plays where Taylor hit guys later, allowed stuff, but Shaheed is nice, but he's not a great number 2 receiver. And the tight end, they're running all this 2 tight end stuff, but the tight ends are not really great receivers, and Derek Carr will at the end be Derek Carr. He is the 14th best quarterback in the league, not the fifth.
Right. You don't want him out there trying to make big plays late in the game. You want him managing an offense when you got a lead, and it's different. Right. The absence of Taysom Hill was felt. A lot of that creativity disappears when Taysom's not there. I don't know why you don't run some of that with Jamal Williams, as your other back, but they didn't do much of that. They did have those injuries along the way. And Shaheed, it's interesting because like he had a catchable ball and it's kind of swatted away. I think Quinion swatted it away, and like we're arguing at the bar. Yes. It's like the Eagles are lucky there, and it's like, well, the defender makes a good play, and if Rashid Shaheed made plays like that, made catches
that's not luck. That's a good play by the defense.
Yeah, he'd be an all-pro if he was that guy, but he's not. He's a speed guy who can catch the ball when it's not necessarily contested, and that's kind of one of the Saints' little weaknesses.
It's one of the things that bugs me actually is that people talk about he had to make that catch. He should have made that catch when a ball gets swatted away by a defender.
Right.
Instead of giving credit to the defender for making a play. Like a dropped pass is a drop.
Right.
If the defender's got his hand in there, that's a pass defense. Let's give some credit to the defender for making a play.
And there's a recognition that, yes, Justin Jefferson makes that catch. And I guess Malik Neighbors now makes that catch from what I was watching yesterday. And those guys do that. Your average guy doesn't rip the ball away from the defender. A lot of these guys are really good NFL players who don't have that part of their skill set.
It's interesting because the Eagles at 2-1 are like, if you think of the preseason favorites, maybe not my preseason favorites, but the preseason favorites in the NFC, they're like better off than any of the other ones.
Right.
Because we'll get to Dallas in a little bit. Green Bay is 2-1, Detroit is 2-1, but San Francisco is 1-2. San Francisco is the team that lost this week despite having the higher post-game win expectancy. And a big part of that is the fake punt, which is not counted in DVOA because it's not predictive. They had 61% post-game win expectancy. I believe you are probably playing the world's smallest violin. Is that what that is?
I'm playing a regular size violin, but I can play a small one. You keep going.
This was the fifth double-digit fourth quarter lead under Kyle Shanahan that was blown.
Oh my God.
And here's who you can't blame. Mm-hmm. Brock Purdy.
Not at all.
Do you know that Brock Purdy leads all quarterbacks in DYAR so far this year? With the knowledge that Josh Allen will likely pass him tonight.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised by that because he's been playing well. He has been throwing a lot of passes as well, which it is a cumulative stat to a degree. But I'm not surprised. He's played well.
They're fourth in passing DVOA, the 49ers. They're 21st rushing and 21st on defense.
Right.
So it's not Purdy. No. Purdy having to throw to Ronnie Bell is a problem.
Right.
Because there's no Deebo Samuel and there's no Christian McCaffrey and there's no George Kittle. And the Rams in their, defense had no Puka Nacua and no Cooper Kupp. And,
right.
The defense, the 49ers defense was bad in the second half. If you include pass interference, the 49ers went from allowing 4 yards a play in the first half to 8.5 yards per play in the second half.
Big pass interference, a huge play to Atwell. So a couple of splash plays along the way. And, we can talk about Shanahan, some of his Shanahan decisions, a 3rd and 1 close to the goal line, and they get stuffed and they kick the short field goal and they settle for it. All these little things that sort of seem suboptimal there. This should have been, even with the offensive injuries, a clamp down and win coast-to-coast game for the 49ers. And it's troubling that when they get into games like that, they don't necessarily win them.
Yeah. The other, of course, team is the Cowboys, right? So the Cowboys are 1-2. What an interesting, oh my God. I was just sitting there so scared of the narrative.
Okay.
Depending on what happened in that game, because either the Ravens are horrible narrative,
right,
losing 3 close games, or the Cowboys can't win anything narrative of what was a really valiant comeback, although it did require the onside kick. And DVOA loves the Ravens in this game.
I would think
the Ravens dominate DVOA for this game because in part because the onside kick doesn't count, but they had 7.6 yards per play compared to 5.9 for the Cowboys, and they had no turnovers, whereas the Cowboys had 2 fumbles. They recovered one of them and they lost one of them. But The Cowboys definitely have problems. The defense is not playing well, and I don't know where to distribute the blame pie between the switch in defensive coordinators, which I don't want to give too much blame for because it's not like Mike Zimmer doesn't have a really strong track record.
Right.
And certain personnel issues,
Right.
such as going from Deron Bland to Kalen, I'm blanking on his last name now, number 21.
Okay.
Who's had some problems, definitely. And then just natural regression and random variation of defenses.
Yeah, it's hard. I think Zimmer has to take some of the blame here, but just inability to stop the run against the Saints, inability to stop the run.
It's not like they're going out there with dime all the time, like last year, where they would go with dime and then Buffalo and then Green Bay just ran all over them. They're not doing that.
It's nothing like that. They're falling for every little tiny bit of misdirection and just getting gashed. Like they're shocked that Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson are going to do play fakes and things like that in that game. They were confused by the things that confused other teams when they placed the Saints there. Part of it might be just, again, there's also been drag on the roster turnover there. When we start talking about now you don't have Doris Armstrong and Dante Fowler, we think of those guys as pass rushers, but it changes your rotation there. That's part of it. Offense, until midway through the fourth quarter, when it looked like the Ravens thought they had already won the game and might have let up a little bit, that offense looked bad.
That part of it is there's like two wide receivers and that's it. Ferguson, I think, is hurt a little bit, the tight end, and then like Jalen Tolbert, like whatever.
Right.
But Dak also wasn't fully on it yesterday, and there's no running game. And I will fully admit that I'm one of the people who poo-pooed the running back issue. Mm-hmm. I was like, it doesn't matter really who the running backs are. Mm-hmm. Part of it is the running backs. Part of it is the offensive line, but part of it is the running back.
Because you lose your center. Yeah, you lost your center. You lost some of your other guys. You replace them with whoever. Then you bring Zeke back and your running backs or whoever. So you have all this whoever there. So it's like this replacement level soup. And so it's like, well, Dak, go be miraculous. Well, that's not a good formula for Dak. CD, go do everything. He's one man. Brandon Cook's a decent player. So, yeah, you're creating that situation. So I think what we'll look at last 2 weeks, until that last 8 minutes, the complementary football is terrible. They're not sequential on offense. And then on defense, they're getting gashed, and you're creating a situation where the entire snowball just rolls against them.
Yeah, I mean, the best news for the Cowboys is that the Eagles also have problems.
Yeah.
But the Eagles are 2-1, right? The Eagles are 2-1, so they're a game behind. I mean, I don't see Washington or the Giants becoming a thing, even though Jaden Daniels has been the best of the rookie quarterbacks.
Right.
We'll see what happens tonight.
We'll see what happens tonight. He has been the best of the rookie quarterbacks. Giants got a little win against the Browns, which was another like Deshaun is toasted game, and Malik Neighbors is amazing.
Yeah, the surprising NFC teams show up a lot when we talk about the DVOA. Give a little prediction, not really a preview of DVOA because it's actually already on FTN.
Okay,
if folks go to FTN, and just so folks know, it's now marked with what week it's gotten updated. So you'll see the DVOA table says week 3M. That means the Monday morning update for week 3. Tomorrow we'll just say 3.
Okay.
The Vikings have the number 1 defense in the league.
Yeah.
Not surprising.
No.
Defense has been fantastic. What surprises me is the Chiefs, who also look like they have one of the best defenses in the league, if you look at certain plays, are 22nd so far.
Wow.
Their defense has actually not been as good as you think it's been.
I mean, yesterday,
this week, It was good this week.
It was good this week, although there were a bunch of penalties towards the end and some uncalled penalties, and there was a couple plays they got
uncalled DPI in the end zone.
Right, and there are a couple plays they got back earlier in the game that looked like they were going to be big plays for the Falcons, but no, their defense looks on field strong.
Yeah.
Especially when you factor in, you consider the Bengals a quality opponent, et cetera.
Yeah. So here is the DVOA. I'm going to do the top 12 because I want to include Kansas City.
Okay.
Kansas City is only 12th, but that is up from last week. Up from last week. DVOA not impressed with the first 2 wins.
And you can see it.
More impressed with the 3rd win.
Okay.
Arizona, despite being 1-2, is 11th.
They were really, really frisky against the Lions. They were kind of in the rearview mirror for the whole game, but they kept preventing the Lions from pulling away. One really bad throw by Murray. He looked good overall. They're going to be a tough team this year.
The New York Jets are 10th.
Yeah. Okay.
After the big win over the Patriots.
Right.
The Chargers are surprisingly 9th, dropping from last week. Again, don't forget, it's early on. No opponent adjustments here. Obviously, right. Chargers did play the Panthers. Yes. Although my opponent adjustment for the Panthers is going to get screwed up by the fact that Andy Dalton does not suck as much as Bryce Young.
Also, you have to worry about a Herbert injury and a Slater injury moving forward. So
yes. You do not want Easton Stick. And in fact, they do not want Easton Stick because when Herbert got injured, they brought in Taylor Heineke.
Heineke on like 8 days of knowing the system.
Yeah. Detroit is 8th.
Yeah. They're pretty solid.
Green Bay is 7th.
They're really real good with Malik Willis at quarterback.
Shocker, right? Yeah, and Love comes back probably this week.
Right.
Which is also shocker. Like
running the ball well.
Matt LaFleur, oh my God, coach of the year right now.
Brilliant game plans to get Willis to have scripted throws, get him on the exterior, spread the ball around. Defense forcing consistent turnovers. Yes, part of it is the Will Levis experience, but they forced him against Hurts as well. Defense is being opportunistic right now. Very solid team. They got a tough one. They got the Vikings this week.
Number 6, Pittsburgh.
Yeah, great defense.
Justin Fields is 11th among quarterbacks in passing so far.
Fine.
I don't know if he can keep this up,
but
I can't pretend he hasn't been good.
I can. I can. I can't pretend he hasn't been good either. He's been okay.
He's also, by the way, let's give him a little credit, not throwing to great receivers.
He's not throwing to great receivers.
Jefferson, Calvin Austin. I mean, other than Pickens,
right?
It's not a great receiving core.
They're playing power football. They have the ball all the time, and they pulled away this week when Herbert got hurt.
I mean, yeah, let's see what happens if Fields has to come back from behind.
Let's see what happens when you're not facing Bo Nix and fire high Heineke. Let's wait and see.
Number 5, Buffalo.
Yeah, well, we'll see tonight, but
see what happens tonight. Number 4, a shocker. DVOA, like I said, loves the win over Dallas and thought that they were pretty good in their first 2 weeks despite losing. Baltimore.
Yeah. They were playing, they played well against the Raiders. They played well
against losing in a terrible, just like everything went wrong for them. I think they had a post-game win expectancy of 96% in that game. It was a terrible, stupid loss, but the underlying predictive values were that this is a good team.
Right.
The Ravens, despite the offensive line problems, the Ravens are a pretty damn good team.
Okay. I buy it. I don't know if they're, what was it, 4th, 3rd?
They're 4th.
4th? I'm 4th right now, but I'm looking to see them right the ship a little bit.
Number 3, Minnesota.
Yeah.
Undefeated Minnesota. That's how they played, man.
They're great. If Minnesota's number 3, you're not telling me who's number 2.
You're not going to like this, but it's partly because there are no opponent adjustments yet. In fact, the last 2 are basically hey, wait till we add the opponent adjustments, all-stars. Number 2 is Seattle, and number 1 is New Orleans. The teams that Seattle has played rank 20th, 24th, and 32nd.
Yes.
And frankly, Denver's not going to be 20th for very long. That's going to drop.
Right.
So when we start with the opponent adjustments, Seattle is going down. But they have been pretty darn good so far against bad opponents.
They've been okay against bad opponents.
They were much better than the final score in the first week against Denver. They really dominated Denver on a play-by-play basis.
We just saw New England give up in the first quarter against the Jets, and they took the Seahawks to overtime. They were not that good against Denver. They suffered 2 safeties, almost suffered a third safety, had a black one. They almost had another safety this week. They're facing Skylar Thompson. They knock him out of the game.
I absolutely agree with the Skylar Thompson. I mean, like I said, Miami is dead last right now. So
they should have, a good team, a number 2 in DVOA team, in my opinion, should have been 31-3 in the third quarter, and then the garbage time comes up. They needed a late touchdown to finally ice that game. And
then New Orleans, the teams they've played are 19th, Philly, 23rd, Dallas, and 28th, Carolina. But, I think you and I both believe Philly and Dallas will be higher than that in a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. And
Philly and Dallas are above average teams.
Right, and they smoked the Cowboys. It's not like the Seahawks haven't smoked anybody, really.
Right.
They absolutely smoked the Cowboys.
So I feel better about the Saints as number 1 than I do Seahawks number 2, but there's definitely some early cooking in here. That's why we use Dave. That's why we mix in the preseason projections, which I believe still have San Francisco as the number 1 team in the NFC.
Which is fine, because I think we look at San Francisco and say, hey, get your guys back. I know it's tough when you have injuries. Nobody else has to deal with injuries, just you guys.
But NFC is a mess. The NFC is a mess. The top teams all have 1 or 2 losses. The 3-0 teams are weird. I don't think anybody thinks Seattle or Minnesota are really Super Bowl favorites.
No.
That's why right now in the playoff odds, our top 3 Super Bowl favorites are all AFC teams.
The trick is when you start burrowing into the wild card picture, and then when you have to look at the Vikings and then the Seahawks. If you're trying to make a playoff parlay or, a division of parlay, that's where you have to look at these teams. And you look at the Bears and say, well, we have to take the Bears. If they were your fun sleeper, you have to take them out of there. And if the Rams were your fun sleeper, I think you got to take them out of there. And that's where you start slotting these teams like the Seahawks and the Vikings right now, provisionally.
Yeah. Useful title points out, by the way, for Miami, it may be Tim Boyle's season if Skylar Thompson is seriously hurt. Seth Walder tweeted this morning, and I agree with him. It's sort of ridiculous that any team would willingly put Tim Boyle on their roster in the year 2024.
Right. Can we talk about how the Dolphins quarterbacks just keep getting hammered, how they're so often in Skylar Thompson's season and things like that? Is it something schematic that gets these guys hurt? I mean, last year they did okay with it, but really watching these guys take wallops all the time and then turn around and talk about what a brilliant schemer Mike McDaniel is. I kind of wonder if we're missing something.
No, maybe he needs to leave in more blockers.
Leave something, yeah, or not have these plays where there's free rushers coming in because there's all this intricate stuff going on.
Monday Night Football, let's preview it. 2 games tonight. We'll start with the Jaguars at the Bills. Now, Bills fans think the Jaguars have their number. I went and looked this up. It's 2 losses in the last 3 years that were both close.
Right.
I don't think the Jaguars have the Bills number because of a loss 3 years ago.
No, and I think one of them was one of those weird self-inflicted Bills loss games that we used to see. We don't see as much of
that 9-6 one in 2021. And then the one last year was the game where Milano and White got hurt during the game, and the Bills defense didn't know quite what to do with it. So
the Jaguars don't know what to do with themselves week in and week out. For all the talent that they have scattered across that roster, I need to see them play a functional game where they're not just simply making mistake after mistake after mistake. I don't think this is the week we're going to see that.
I do feel good about the Bills in this one at home.
Yeah, what's the spread?
I feel they're the better team. The line is 5.5.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Another bet I like, Bills are dead last this year against running backs as receivers.
Okay.
I realize that's only a couple of games, but Etienne, they do like to throw to, so you can get Etienne over 3.5 receptions or over 21.5 receiving yards.
I like both of them. Bigsby's hurt, so they might be doing less rotation, relying on Etienne a little bit more. I like those.
Commanders at Bengals.
Okay.
Jaden Daniels, surprisingly reasonably good so far.
Yes.
Although they can't score once they get in the red zone. Commanders have the worst offense in the red zone so far. Again, just 2 games.
Just 2 games.
Bengals are the better team.
Yeah.
I don't know about the line is 7.5. I don't know about the cover on that.
Yeah, I can see that. And, the Commanders, part of Jaden Daniels is the best of the rookies, is he got the Giants last week and was running the ball well. And they do set things up he's a guy who's going to get figured out if they keep running the scheme they're running, where there's a lot of little short passes to the backs, lots of little short passes to the backs. Is it this week? I don't know. But you're right. Until I know the Bengals have heeded their wake-up call.
Yeah.
I'm not giving them. I'm not laying a touchdown until.
7.5. Right. My bet for this one is Jamar Chase over 100 yards at plus 160.
Oh wow! Against that secondary.
And with T. Higgins back, I think actually helps Chase.
Right.
Because now you can't just put everyone on Chase. You have to pay attention to T. Higgins, which I think helps Chase against a team that constantly gets destroyed by number 1 receivers, including Malik Neighbors last week.
Yeah.
So I like Jamar Chase to go over. It's 82.5 is the number, but you can get plus 160 on DraftKings for 100 or more.
I like that. You can juice it up a little bit. And again, yeah, Commanders don't match up well against anybody. The more people they have to match up, the more problems are likely to ensue for them.
The Beers Street podcast says, can anyone show me one person who said to avoid Hill before the season started? Besides me, are you talking about Tyreek Hill?
I think they are. And I mean, I wouldn't have said avoid him.
I wouldn't have said to avoid Hill. No, because in general, like if the quarterback plays worse, the number one receiver usually still gets his.
That's a good point. Or if a lot of times the backup quarterback will force feed the number one along the way. But ghoulishness, man, ghoulishness. I mean, yeah, you made a good call. Like, yeah, can't wait till Tua gets injured and then my fantasy pick looks great. But no, you're accurate call.
So we like the Bills and the Bengals tonight, but we much prefer the Bills to cover than the Bengals to cover.
Exactly. I might even lean towards taking the set at 7.5 just to see if the Commanders can keep it close against a team that has trouble.
Jaden Daniels might be a little frisky.
What's that?
Jaden Daniels maybe be a little frisky.
a little frisky. Run the ball, get a couple first downs, maybe get it in the end zone with his legs. Who knows? All
right. We will be back on Thursday to preview week 4 in the NFL. Make sure you are reading Mike's Substack again. It's miketanier.substack.com and follow him on X and Threads, Mike Tanier. Follow me, Schatz NFL. And again, we will be back Thursday at 11 a.m. to preview week 4. Everybody enjoy Monday Night Football. We'll talk to you guys later. So long.